Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion of the episode before we rank each episode against each other. And today's episode is Charmed Season 3, Episode 21, Look Who's Barking. The episode in a nutshell is a brief summary of what happened within the episode. So, we open the episode with Phoebe writing in the Book of Shadows, and she has added photographs of her and Cole's human self in order to add him to the Balthazar entry so that any future witches who may be seduced by him will be forewarned that he's actually a demon. And Prue, of course, comes over and says that it sounds more like a dating ad when she reads that, like he likes walks in the park and he likes jazz music. But Phoebe's insistent that it's to warn future witches. Meanwhile, Piper is hiding in the basement, and the sisters hear a bang, and it turns out she's been blowing up Christmas ornaments because she still hasn't gotten quite a large enough grasp on her powers yet to be able to control them with any sort of reliability. Then it switches scenes to where there are dogs that start barking, and even Kit starts to act up. And we see an old man who is crying over a photo album of his wife, and his dog starts barking before all the walls shake, all the windows break, and then a banshee enters the room screaming at him, and he dies as her scream bursts all of his blood vessels, and we later learn he drowns in his own blood. We then move on to the next day, where Prue notices an article about all of the dogs barking and the record number of noise complaints, and then sees one about the man's death. But Phoebe is still writing in the book about Cole. This time she claims it's Balthazar's side that she is updating, and she gets a premonition while she's holding the page about a girl who is about to, like the new next innocent that's going to die in a phone booth as all the booth glass shatters and then her eyes start bleeding. Phoebe assumes because she was holding Balthazar's page that it's Cole, and so she convinces Prue to summon Cole. However, Cole is actually able to resist the summons. Meanwhile, Piper has now moved from the basement up into her room, where she is meditating, and Leo interrupts her, which causes her to blow up the tape player, which she called her guru. And he tries to comfort her about her power, saying that, if she wasn't ready for the power, she wouldn't have received it. And just like every other power she's had, there's the learning curve, but she will eventually be able to control it. Meanwhile, Prue and Phoebe are investigating where the man died, and they do confirm that it was definitely supernatural, but Prue is still iffy about it being Cole. Meanwhile, in the underworld, Cole visits with a robed man who he's going to try to end his love for Phoebe magically. And while this robed man is able to transmute his blood so that the vanquishing potion for him will no longer work, he cannot remove love, as his human half will always be vulnerable to things that make humans vulnerable, like, example, love and his love for Phoebe. We then have Prue and Phoebe returning home, taking a second look at the book, and realize that on the next page, where the back of Phoebe's hand would have been touching, is the entry about banshees who basically scream, or basically find someone in pain, scream at them, their scream will burst all of their blood vessels, and they drown in their own blood. Then, of course, they have the conundrum of the fact that the book has no vanquish for a banshee, only a tracking spell, and Prue volunteers, so they cast the spell on Prue, and she turns into a beautiful white dog with blue eyes. She, of course, is mortified by the fact that she is in dog form and attempts to hide from her sisters, but Phoebe makes her come out by asking her to come out, if not for herself, then for the innocent. And Prue does come out before she then goes to the door, and they hear glass shattering and barking coming from downstairs as Prue has left the room, and they realize that she is chasing Kit around her house. Then Prue goes to the door, Piper and Phoebe follow, and then while they're outside at the park, they're having an argument about how it can't go on much longer and they need to play rock, paper, scissors, but Phoebe's already lost and they won't do 2 out of 3. And we realize that Prue had to go to the washroom. But Phoebe gets out of it and throws the bag afterwards because the Banshee starts to attack and Prue runs off. This is where they find a teenage runaway in the phone booth, which Phoebe saw in her vision, and Prue runs off after tracking the Banshee while Phoebe and Piper fight the Banshee. They have the girl run away, and then Piper tries to blow her up but ends up blowing up the dumpster that's next to the Banshee, and then the Banshee zeroes in on Phoebe and starts screaming at her before it runs off. We then have Prue getting hit by a car, which a man gets out of. Meanwhile, both Piper and Phoebe are worried about her as she hasn't come back. And they then go up to the attic. Leo comes back and explains that he was told by the elders that banshees are former witches and that witches do not kill, or banshees do not kill witches. Rather, they use a source of unhealed pain to turn them into banshees. And then, of course, while he's telling Piper this, Phoebe, who is in the attic, starts to hear all the glasses shatter, calls for Piper and Leo, um, but they don't make it before she is screamed at. Then Piper does manage to blow up the Banshee, but Phoebe now becomes the Banshee and basically complains to Leo that Prue is a dog, Phoebe is a Banshee, she can't control her powers, and she is very not okay. And ends up blowing up Graham's old sewing machine, which just adds insult to injury for her. But Leo calms her down and basically asks her to follow her instincts, to do what her instincts tell her to do. She closes her eyes, takes a deep breath, and she decides to summon Cole. Then meanwhile, Phoebe's out stalking people to try to find her first victim, and Leo does warn also that if she does kill even one person, she'll be a banshee forever. Luckily, she does not succeed in killing anybody, and then Piper again summons Cole. At first, he refuses to help, saying he doesn't love Phoebe anymore. He's moved on. He doesn't do good. He's being evil, just like Phoebe thinks he is. But then, because his pain is also so raw and terrible, Phoebe comes back home alongside Prue, who has managed to escape from the man's apartment. And he basically gets attacked by Phoebe, grabs her, shimmers her to the mausoleum. They fight it out, and then Cole he first changes into Balthazar to resist the scream, but then he turns back into Cole to tell Phoebe that he loves her and not to make her kill him. And she then turns back into her human self and she says, this doesn't change anything, and he agrees that it doesn't. but that he was tricked into killing her. Phoebe claims she doesn't want to hear it. Cole says that she does, and then he reveals that Raynor cast some sort of spell on him that tricked him into killing the witch, and he wouldn't have done it on his own. And that is then when he shimmers away, saying that his plan, Raynor's plan, which was to make her lose faith in him, obviously worked, and there's no way back now. And so, again, he shimmers away. Prue, as she is running after Phoebe, manages to return back to being human, and Piper makes a joke that she might have fleas. We then finish off the episode at P3, where Prue has made a date with the man who hit her with his car because she can't resist a man that put up flyers to find her. Then Phoebe says that they're both out of hiding now and that she's going to follow some instincts of her own, and that now that she knows the reason why Cole did what he did, she thinks that he can still be good because he still loves her, and therefore she gave up on him too quickly and wants to bring him back. And Piper takes a look at the window bill because, like, almost all the windows in the manor were shattered, and is quite depressed. Now that we know what happened, it's time to rank the episode. As always, we'll be ranking on our two ranking lists, the mostly objective ranking list, and then the personal ranking list after that. So we'll start with our mostly objective rank values, and I've highlighted those I felt applied to the episode. As always, we'll start on the positive side, and we start with 3 points for the successful emotional impact. And for me, in this episode, every single time that I have ever watched this episode, there is the first victim, which is the old man crying as he looks at photos of his wife, which we later learn had died a couple of months before, and he was never able to get over it. And he's bawling his eyes out, and then the banshee targets his pain, and he ends up passing away. And for whatever reason, that scene has always emotionally got me. I have always felt so much sympathy and sadness for this man, even though he's not even really named, or if he's named, it's said so in passing, I don't even remember what it is. But I just always feel that the emotion of that scene gets to me and is actually very successful. And that's why I gave it 3 points. Then we move on to our multi-season main character developments, and there are 2, which are each worth 4 points. And that, of course, is that Prue turns into a dog, and Phoebe becomes a banshee, temporarily. Next, we have the multi-season main character growth, and this has to do with Cole's strength increase. Even back in the day when he wasn't in love with Phoebe, the sisters were able to summon him. To be fair, the bounty hunter did intercept them originally, but then afterwards they were able to summon him. However, now he is strong enough to resist being summoned, and he does so at the beginning. And he also has managed to transmute his blood so that the vanquishing potion is no longer able to kill him, which is also a growth in strength, and that is worth 4 points. Next, we have a couple of world building elements, which are that Phoebe adds human Cole into the Book of Shadows for future generations, and that banshees exist in the world, and that is a new magical creature that we have learned inhabits the Charmed universe. And then, last but not least, on the positives, we have yet another 4 points for our main relationship development, which is Phoebe and Cole admitting that they are still in love with each other and that they are both feeling a lot of pain over their separation. We then have Cole revealing the reason to Phoebe because he knows that's what she needs, even when she denies wanting to hear it. And then at the very end of the episode, we have Phoebe telling Piper that she thinks that she's made a mistake on giving up on Cole, that she gave up too early, and that his continuing love for her is a sign that there is still good in him, and she believes that she will be able to bring him back. Bringing us to the negatives for the episode, and the first negative is a -2 points. And this, of course, is the negative messaging or behavior, and this is for littering. Phoebe and Piper, obviously, are in the conundrum of needing to pick up Prue's waste because she is now a dog, and after the fuss that they made in Morality Bites about the guy leaving the poop on their front yard or their front walkway, they really ought to not leave her poop out in the forest at the park where some kid could be running around playing and step in it, or even an adult could step in it. So there is the not picking up of the poop ultimately, which is also a second -2 points. But the main one was the litter, and that is when Prue then starts running after the banshee. Instead of taking 30 seconds to bend down, pick it up, Phoebe decides to leave the poop there. And then in addition to that, instead of just holding on to the bag, she throws it onto the ground, and plastic, as we know, does not disintegrate, will be there forever. And now she has just left it sitting there in the park. And I don't know San Francisco's laws specifically, but most places do have at least bylaws against, littering, not picking up after your animals, etc. So obviously negative messaging and behavior, one, leaving the poop, and two, littering by leaving a plastic bag in the park, one that she could have just shoved into her pocket or just held onto as she ran. Literally no reason that she had to throw it onto the ground. And then the next negative is the main relationship regression or breakup, which of course is that when they get to the mausoleum, Cole manages to turn Phoebe back into a human by confessing his love, but she says that it doesn't change anything, and he agrees with her that it doesn't change anything. However, obviously that is countered again at the end of the episode when Phoebe on her own says that she's going to give Cole another chance, but Cole doesn't know that yet, and as far as Cole knows, they've reconfirmed their breakup at the mausoleum, and so I think it's worth the -3 points, but that still leaves us with a total of 20 points, and so this episode is definitely a 10 out of 10 episode. For our Season 3 rankings, on our mostly objective rankings so far, the list is as follows, and it should be noted before we begin that in the case of the mostly objective list, anytime that more than one episode has the same score, they will just be ranked in the order the episodes aired in. Having said that, we start with The Honeymoon's Over, followed by Magic Hour, Sleuthing with the Enemy, The Good, the Bad, and the Cursed, Just Tarried, The Demon Who Came In from the Cold, Look Who's Barking, which is this episode, is in 7th, All Hallowell's Eve, Coyote Piper, Blinded by the White Lighter, Once Upon a Time, We All Scream for Ice Cream, Pre-Witched, Exit Strategy, Power Outage, Bride and Gloom, followed by Death Takes a Hallowell, Wrestling with Demons, Sight Unseen, Primrose Empath, and then San Francisco. So as for my personal opinion on the episode, I love this episode. I really think, apart from one standout negative, there really isn't much that offends me personally about it. I always love the episodes where one of the sisters turns into things, and this one we got a twofer. We got Prue turning into a dog, Phoebe turning into a banshee. I love the aesthetic of the banshee with the white hair, the blue contacts, the big fangs, the really red lips, the gray tattered robes even, the claws. Oh my gosh. I love the aesthetic of the banshee. I love the dog. It was a beautiful dog. I do think the dog should have had black hair instead of white hair because, I mean, Prue has black hair and blue eyes, so it would have made sense had she been a black dog with blue eyes, but the white dog that they got was also incredibly beautiful, and that's just a minor aesthetic thing. Obviously, let's talk about that negative there. Phoebe is so desperate for Cole to be evil, it is actually shocking. Pruitt and Piper, who weren't even the ones who really liked Cole to start with, have more grace for him than she does. They both think there must be a reason. They both think that, it wasn't like Cole, like last episode, and even in this episode, Prue trying to comfort her, and Phoebe is just all in on Cole has to be evil. And then, she says, "Oh, I jumped the gun. I was too quick now that I know the reason." And I don't know. I know that they have different people who write different episodes. Like just based on the opening credits, they'll be different. Like the closing credits, there'll be different writers for different episodes. And I have to think there was a different writer because literally the complaint I had about the last episode was that Phoebe got the door open a crack. We were then given her point of view through the crack, and we, as the audience, could clearly see that Raynor was in front of Cole, moved his hand over Cole's face. Cole screamed out in agony, turning into Balthazar before killing the witch. Yet somehow she is super shocked that, what, Raynor? He cast a spell on you to trick you into killing the witch? And it's like, well, what did you think the hint thing going in front of his face was? Like, hello, we saw this. And I would have grace and say she didn't see it, except that was done when we were looking at her point of view through the crack of the door. That was what they did. Like we saw Raynor and Cole talking while Phoebe banged on the door. Then she manages to get it open a crack, but isn't able to get inside. And then the camera moves so that it is looking through that crack, and that is what we see. So she saw Raynor do that. Raynor with the hand over his face, like waved in front of his face, and then Cole's scream of agony, and she would have heard that if not seen it before, he killed it, and yet she's standing there like, what would motivate Raynor to do that, to want to turn you evil? And then Cole, who literally the last episode had warned her time after time in the episode that they were trying to turn him evil, that they were trying to get him to kill a witch, that they were trying to turn her against him. Suddenly, she forgot he said that multiple times in the last episode and is all like, why would he have tricked you into killing a witch? And then Cole's like, well, to destroy your faith in me, because if your faith in me is gone, I have no reason to be good anymore. You are what kept me good. And then he shimmers away all depressed. And then at the bar, she's like, oh, well, now I'm going to give Cole a second chance. I know the reason now. And I'm like, you already knew the reason. You had to have. There's no way you didn't. Given everything in the last episode that happened, there is no way you did not know that Cole was tricked into killing this witch, or that killing this witch was Raynor's goal to turn you against him. He told you that. You saw it through the crack in the door. I'm just so confused, and obviously there must have been a different writer who did not have this access to the previous episode because it just does not make sense. I guess I could call it a continuity error, but even if I took those points off, it's still 10 out of 10 on the objective anyways, but that annoyed me. Like I've just been ranting about it for how long? It annoyed me. But everything else about the episode was so perfect. I love Piper coming to terms with her powers, Leo being so supportive and helping her, even when she's snapping at him, just keeping his calm, helping her to trust her instincts. Even when she summons Cole, he's against it, but he lets her do it, trusting her instincts and letting her trust her instincts. And obviously it ends up working out as it does end up saving Phoebe. Prue's little side quest as a dog to meeting the man, and then her little quip at the end about how can she resist a guy who put up flyers to find her was great. And of course, like I said, I just have a personal bias and affection for any of the episodes where they turn into other things other than witches tend to always be among my top favorites. And this one, of course, was no exception, and we got 2 for 1. So nothing really to say except it was a 10 out of 10 episode. And I love this episode. It's one of my favorites, not just of the season, but of the series. Very memorable, sticks in your mind. When I'm looking back on the series, this is one of the first episodes I tend to think of. And that is why on the season 3 rankings so far, on my personal ranking, we have in first place San Francisco. This episode comes in second, Look Who's Barking, Just Harried, Once Upon a Time, We All Scream for Ice Cream, All Hallowell's Eve, Death Takes a Hallowell, Pre-Witched, Bride and Gloom, Magic Hour, Blinded by the White Lighter, The Honeymoon's Over, Exit Strategy, Sleuthing with the Enemy, Primrose Empath, Sight Unseen, Power Outage, The Demon Who Came in from the Cold, The Good, the Bad, and the Cursed, Wrestling with Demons, and in last place so far, Coyote Piper. Bringing us now to our series ranking so far, where we're going to be ranking each of the episodes or each of the seasons against each other. And on our mostly objective ranking, so far, season 2 is in first place with 75%, season 1 in second with 73.18%, and season 3 so far has 164 out of 220. Then when we go over to the personal ranking, we have season 1 in first place with 71.50%, season 2 in second with 56.82%, and so far for season 3 we have 166 out of 220 points. With that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 3, Episode 21, Look Who's Barking. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.